Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wendell Jones, and welcome to this edition of our program, On Point, for this Monday. And we are going to have a good week here. We are starting out with a wonderful guest on our program today. There are a whole lot of young people in the Bahamas doing a whole lot of wonderful things. And 6 years ago, it was Jones Communications that really started the awards for Bahamians who were 40 under 40. Who were making their marks around the world. And then, of course, we decided that we would only do it once. It was a one-off because we were celebrating at the time the 40th anniversary of independence. And so we honored 40 Bahamians under the age of 40 who were doing some powerful things in the world. Well, today on our program, we have another young Bahamian, Diasi Raming Jr., who is the Chief Executive Officer of Arawak X. It's a company that is located at Sandy Port, and this company does equity crowdfunding and small and medium business financing. Mr. Raming tells me that he studied robotics at Northwestern University in Chicago. And he tells me, Skibo, that he is a graduate of Sachs and Augustine's College. And so that's not a bad thing. And so it's our pleasure to have him as our guest on the program today. Mr. Raming, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's very good. Glad that you're here. Why did you study robotics, Mr. Raming?
Well, as a kid, I've always been interested in building things. And so, it always starts with the Lego, right? So as I grew up, I wanted to build things, and engineering was the natural cause thing to do. So at first I went to try and be a chemical engineer, and then as happens to so many people, chemistry destroyed me. So I had to figure out what I wanted to do after that, and I fell in love kind of with aerospace and that kind of industry, and the type of robotics that I studied was called controlled systems design, which is as close to building of modern airplanes as you could think of it as like avionics design. So.
There are many people who would ask, well, you studied robotics. What are you doing in the little Bahamas?
So afterwards, after university, I wanted to come back home. So obviously couldn't build those things. But there, as you know, we're a country that is in need of people to help build it. And so it wasn't long before I got involved in building this something or the other. So I found my way into what I'm doing now, which is fintech.
So you're not practicing anything to do with robotics?
No, but as you're aware, there's a lot of similarities between building a well-oiled machine and building a business and building proper financial systems and things like that to help small businesses.
Is it really analogous?
I think so. There are many, in terms of processes that you have to develop. So, for example, there's a process for example, when I checked into the radio station today, I went up to the front desk, and then the front desk person gave a phone call up to. That's a process. That is a business process that has had to have been developed over time, and and that's what engineering is kind of about. Those kind of processes.
It's just a habit, man. It's just a habit of a culture, really.
Well, see, when I came back home, I worked for Dad. We worked as management consultants, so helping businesses streamline those processes. So we would come in and we would observe a process like that, and then we would say, well, especially if it was a sales process, you could improve a little bit over here, you could improve a little bit over there, and it improves the whole system. So got used to kind of looking at business in that way.
I wonder if I can use a robotics engineer in JCN. Anyway, I'll think about that.
Oh.
But let's talk about a little bit about Arawak X. Tell us about that company.
So that's there's a parent company called M Dollars.
M Dollars?
Yes, and it's just mobile dollars with a Z.
Okay.
And the Arawak X platform is a equity crowdfunding and SME financing platform. And what that is it basically brings investors together with businesses, small businesses, so that they can sell portions of their company to raise money. As you know, with a business, there's that point in time at the beginning to the medium-sized part of the business where the business may be too risky for a bank to give it a loan. So people are stuck kind of borrowing money from family and friends, scrapping together. Even if they have legitimate ideas, they can't get the funding to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing is we're sitting right in that gap.
You are fulfilling a need.
That's correct.
And this need exists because of banking policies.
Well, it's not just that. A bank is looking for like a guaranteed return. And as you know, with business isn't guaranteed, especially not at the beginning stages. When a business really needs the help, is the money is when it can't get it. So it's kind of that catch-22. So we're trying to fit there to help businesses grow, because we believe that when businesses grow, the country will be better off for it.
Don't you find in this environment, and since the recession, that you have a whole lot of businesses that have been around for a little while, that are finding themselves in great difficulty?
Absolutely. When I came home after university, I went off to university in 2008. So
you went off in 2008.
Went off in 2008.
So at the beginning of the recession.
Yeah. So I have my childhood is this rosy kind of picture of all this growth, all of the everybody was flush with cash. Everybody, that was my childhood, and then. During university, I'm hearing from my parents, no, things are really bad here, things are really bad. You're like, oh, no, that can't be right. And then you come home and things are really bad. Like the recession for the U.S. was a depression for us. Working in the family business, helping companies trying to find, because they had to become more efficient to survive. So it was one of those do or die situations.
The Asir Raming, people tell me that if you were able to survive the recession, that you really know what you're doing in business. Eh?
Yeah, and you're very tough.
You're very resilient.
Yes.
And there are a whole lot of people who went under.
Tons of good businessmen that went under too. And it's not because they went under. It was just the climate was so difficult. It was so difficult for so many different things. Like the middle class got squeezed, and as anyone who's in business knows, when the middle class gets squeezed, the whole society feels it.
Yes. And tell us how much things in your mind have changed since the 2008 recession to now.
So I think people have there was kind of this sense before the recession that there's this unlimited potential for growth. We kind of benefited from the U.S. doing so well that we kind of were lackadaisical about certain business processes. For example, people didn't advertise as much. People just kind of believed mainly in that build it and they will come kind of concept. Mm-hmm. And yes, while you still have people that believe that, I think the business people that have survived realize that they have to do something to get customers in the door. Otherwise, you're not going to have the sales. You can't just wait for people to contact you. You have to be in constant communication with them so that they can, when they're ready to purchase your service or your product, they'll pick you. And that's one of the major changes.
Yeah, there have been many paradigm shifts.
Many.
Yes, since the 2008 recession. Eh?
Mm-hmm.
But tell me, we are here in 2019, and many years after the onset of the recession, 11 years or so, and the U.S. economy grew exponentially.
Yes, it did.
Ours did not. Our economy didn't grow. As a matter of fact, all of the indices show us that we did not grow. Why?
I believe that it has to do with the same access to financing for businesses. So we have a wealth of ideas here in this country. People have seen, I'm not the only Bahamian that went off to school. People have gone off to school. Some people have gone to Europe and Asia, and they've seen things, and they've seen working things that are could exist here in the Bahamas. Could help, could make a lot of money, especially in the tourism sector directed to the tourists. And the issue is that they have these great ideas, they start companies, but then they're undercapitalized. So they can never kind of get to that point where the business grows. And with something like the tourism industry, when a tourism business grows, it grows the whole economy. So, because they're not taking money away from someone else. People are actually flying in. I'll give you a perfect example. I have a friend who's in Israel, and she contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm coming to the Bahamas." And when we were speaking to her, and she's like, "Yeah, I saw the swimming with the pigs thing on Instagram, and I dragged my whole family here to go see that." So that's an example of something where you're creating something out of nothing. That's money that would have never come in if that service didn't exist. So you know what I mean. It's an expanding kind of pie kind of thing. So when I look at business, I think of it as the better that small and medium businesses do, the more jobs that are going to be created, because each one hires people, and when people are hired, people are going to have money in their pockets. So when they have money in their pockets, they're going to spend more. And when they spend more, everybody benefits, especially business people. And then business people can. It's one of those self perpetuating kind of cycles. And so that's what Arawak X does. We're there to help companies find the financing.
Yeah, you analyze situations.
Yes, and
yes.
So as part of that, finding the financing, they have to be structured properly. So because an investor isn't going to just put his money into any old company, not any idea, but any company. So there's certain structures that have to be in place to make an investor feel comfortable to say, you know what, okay, it's a risk, but I know that these guys are they've really thought this through, and there's a high chance that this could work.
We hear a whole lot about economies of scale.
Yes.
We have a very small economy.
We do.
And there is...
In some ways.
In some ways?
In some ways.
Explain.
So if you think of... this is why the tourism event space is so popular, because this is why the tourism space is so popular, because we only have 400,000 Bahamians, or around that, depending on how they count. But there are 6 million tourists coming in, more every year. So it's kind of presents an opportunity. You can almost do any kind of business directed at 6 million people, and the numbers start to make sense. You start to have the scale that makes sense. Whereas, if you're only selling to Bahamians, there's only so many of things that we like and we buy. So you really have to sell kind of a big ticket item to get those numbers.
But the point is made that since tourism accounts for 80% or more of our economy, that we are all in tourism.
In some ways, we're into catering to that kind of that demographic, because there are just a lot of them. So yes. I mean, it's natural.
Yeah, you see, I am in the tourism business
exactly
because I depend on people who cater to tourists, to advertise with our radio and television stations. Yes, but we have getting back to the point of the growth of the economy.
Yes.
You made the point earlier on that access to capital is extremely important for an economy to grow.
Absolutely.
Banks have complained that they are awash with cash.
The money is
here. Tremendous amount of liquidity in the system. But they hold on to the cash. They are not keen, apparently, to fund small businesses. And hence you are involved in the finding funding for small and medium businesses in the Bahamas. Why are they holding on to the cash? Why are they not funding small and medium-sized businesses? For instance, why are banks hesitant to give loans to young people for real estate, to buy a piece of land? Tell me.
Well, I can speak to the business part. I think, and this is the big question for kind of like economists and things like that. But I think that the reason is just because it's not within their business model. So they have so a bank, the riskier the client is, the more interest they charge. So that makes sense, right? So the issue is some businesses are just outside of their risk profile. So instead of them charging a 18-20% interest rate, which people would run away from and cry foul with a lot of these businesses, they just don't give them. So it's kind of, so there's that element to it. The next element is that they're not really well suited for this kind of that small medium enterprise kind of environment. Business is very difficult. Anyone who's tried a business before or been involved in small business understands that it's very, very difficult, and it has a high failure rate. And that being said, it takes a little while for things to get refined to the point where the risk is low enough where you can do 4 or 5 years of what is a bank loan? A big bank loan is usually 7 years. Very few small businesses can do a 7-year projection to pay back a loan. That's difficult. So in a way, they're acting very rationally. Now, on the other hand, the issue, of course, is that money needs to be mobilized in the society. If you can't, if that money is just sitting there in bank accounts and not being lent and spent, that money doesn't have an opportunity to grow. And so what we do is we make sure companies are properly structured. They're definitely out of the risk profile of banks, but these companies have the ability to grow 5-10 times with that funding.
Most banks are risk averse.
Absolutely.
Yes? And they are risk averse even though they are charging a lot of fees. All of the banks here are profitable. Yes? They're all profitable.
From what I understand, yes.
They, as a matter of fact, it might be argued that some are too profitable, and that there's such a thing. You wonder whether or not we have the right policies in place in our country. I'm talking from the standpoint of corporate governance and the central bank of the Bahamas to enable the average entrepreneur to grow and to enable the economy to grow.
So I don't want to necessarily dig into the system. I actually have to. I work with the central bank, and they've been very helpful in helping us with what we're doing. So I've
You
always,
don't. You need central bank approval to do what you're doing.
in some ways, yes, because there's a what we're doing. We're also allowing people